Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Emotionally Intelligent Parenting Podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Pinto. We're going to have some fun because it's just started raining. My kids are outside with the neighbors' kids and I can hear them yelling. I feel like I want to start this again, but I have literally hit record 3 times and now I'm just going to roll with it. So I hope you guys don't mind. There may be some yelling and shouting in the background, but hey, I'm a parent, so you guys get it. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. This is Sarah R. Moore. She is so beautiful. I only just met her really online recently this year, and I have followed her work for a little while, but we got chatting, I think over, I don't know, Messenger probably, and I said, would you like to come on the podcast? Because her work and my work align so beautifully, and I want to bring her on and kind of share her with you guys. So she is from Dandelion Seeds Positive Parenting. She's an author and a speaker, and I love that she also says she's an armchair neuroscientist, which is kind of what I think I am too, because I love the science. She's also, most importantly, a mum. She's a lifelong learner with training in child development and trauma recovery, interpersonal neurobiology, and actually improv comedy. So, that's brave. She's a certified master trainer in conscious parenting, and she helps bring joy, ease, and connection back to families all around the globe. And her work's been featured in a number of publications: HuffPost, Scary Mummy, Motherly. There's many, many more. She's based in Colorado, and her family spend a lot of time world schooling. And her heart's desire is to bring greater peace and healing to the world through love and respectful parenting. So we had a really great conversation. We covered things like, do both parents need to be on the same page? The concept that, I guess the old belief that a lot of people still hold, which is we need to be harsh and toughen our kids up because the world isn't kind. I actually really love that part of the conversation. I can hear my kids in the background. I apologize again. She actually also talks about really the recipe that kind of creates kids to grow up choosing sometimes damaging, unsupportive, and coercive relationships when they're older. So, how to steer away from that and what we can do as parents in order to help our kids to grow up to choose relationships that are healthy, friends that are healthy, partners that are healthy, and things like that. So I love that she asked, I wrote this down because it just really landed with me. What if we raise kids in respectful, collaborative, peaceful ways that help them to grow up to choose being this way and choose relationships that are like this? I was like, mind blown. I love little quotes and snippets and stuff like that. Okay, so before we get into the interview, I do want to first just acknowledge the Darug Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, work, and record this podcast. I pay my respects to all First Nations people, elders, and ancestors, and I acknowledge that sovereignty was never ceded, and I stand in solidarity towards a shared future. All right, guys, enjoy. Let's jump in. Okay, hey Sarah, how are you?
I am well. How are you?
I'm really good, thank you. We just spoke off air before jumping on that I was doing the morning school run drop off, and I didn't want to be late for you. And I have, there's been so much going on, and I had to thank you for being so patient with coming on and making a time and everything. And so I'm really, really excited to talk to you because I love everything you post and all of your messages and everything. So I feel like we're really aligned.
I absolutely love it when that happens. First of all, thank you. I really appreciate that. And it's so fun when you can connect with somebody who's clear on the other side of the planet and say, I feel like I could hang out and take care of your kids, or you could take care of my kids, and it would be a good thing. I love it when it works out that way.
Yes, maybe tell us a bit about you, your family, where you are, and your kids, and things like that, so we can kind of get to know you.
Absolutely. So I am Sarah Moore. If people Google me, I always say Sarah, middle initial R Moore, because there are 10 billion Sarah Moores in the world. My parents were not at all creative with my name. They had no idea I'd be doing this someday, even though I was born long before Google, but I digress. Anyway, founder of Dandelion Seeds Positive Parenting, author of Peaceful Discipline. I am a certified parent coach, and honestly, I do a lot of the things that you do, just over here in Boulder, Colorado. I have one child here on Earth, another one who I lost a long time ago, but she is still very much present in the parenting work that I do. I have one husband and two kitty cats, and absolutely feel passionate about empowering parents to have more connection-based relationships with their children.
Oh, wow, that is beautiful. And so, how old is your son now?
Sure, yeah, it's actually a daughter, and she
Oh, your daughter.
is no problem. She is 10 and a half. I mistakenly called her almost 11 earlier today, and she told me clearly she is 10 and a half, not 11 yet.
Oh, I don't know where I got the idea of son from. My daughter just turned 7 about a week ago, actually less than a week ago, it was on Friday, and she would like when it was coming up to her birthday, oh, a few months before, she was very adamant that she was 6 3/4, or before she was 6 1/2. And like I had to remember those, those little sort of timings. Otherwise, she would get frustrated.
So happy birthday. If she were here, I would sing to her, but for the benefit of you and all your listeners, I won't sing after all.
Oh, I wouldn't mind that. That would be lovely. Yeah, they're at school today, and it was a good morning. And Easter is coming up, so they're excited about that too, which is lovely. So,
Yeah.
so maybe for those parents or educators listening who haven't, come across your work, Dandelion Seeds, haven't seen. I know you're on all the platforms. We have all your links. They're going to be down below in the show notes, so everyone can jump off after listening to this and find more about your work. But maybe let us know a bit about more into the peaceful parenting, and what that is and why you love it so much.
Yeah, so peaceful discipline essentially is not only the name of my book, but it's really a whole approach to parenting that I feel very passionate about. First of all, to discipline means to teach, not to punish. So that is one of the major paradigm shifts that I really want to get out into the world. And the peaceful part I added because there are really three components to being peaceful. It is my reminder to myself to be peaceful, to choose peaceful approaches to that discipline, to that teaching, no matter what the topic is. Number two, even more importantly, my child has to perceive it as peaceful, because it doesn't matter if I am saying I'm being peaceful right now if I'm coming across as scary or overbearing or controlling or whatever. So I have to be mindful of how my message is landing with the recipient of my message. And then last but not least, this is one that a lot of people forget, but every time we are in a parenting scenario with our children, our inner child is also paying attention, saying, am I going to reinforce perhaps something that was not as peaceful that I experienced firsthand when I was growing up? Am I going to continue that narrative? Or is now an opportunity for cycle breaking and healing? And when I choose those healing paths, my inner child heals as well, because I realize I always deserve this too, and I don't have to carry around any longer whatever pain I might be harboring from childhood. So it's a really powerful, whole lot of information packed in those two words, peaceful and discipline.
Wow. Yeah, I can hear it. I can hear that. And I love that you made the point about discipline versus punishment at the start. I feel like that's well, you said it's a paradigm shift. There's such misconceptions around the word discipline. And I think when people, particularly out and about or at the supermarket, a child might be having a really tough time or having a meltdown. And there's this kind of mentality of like, that kid needs some discipline. And they actually mean you need to, that kid needs to kind of cop it. Like you got to pull them in line. Do you know what I mean?
I do, absolutely. If I go to anybody on the street and I say, do you like discipline? Most people are going to have a visceral reaction to that. No, that's a scary thing. I don't want it. No fun. 0 stars on Amazon. Please don't discipline me, right? When in reality, we have to remember the root word is disciple. A disciple is a student, and we want to follow our teacher because our teacher is living in a way where we think, I can't get enough of you. I want to be like you. I want to talk like you, walk like you. If I am your disciple, you are everything I want to be someday. And that's a total paradigm shift. Teaching has to feel peaceful in order for anybody to want to follow us or be around us, children included.
I'm like nodding internally at everything you have just said. I feel like, as you said, that word discipline, it just has such a negative connotation. And, coming back to the root of the word, of course we want to and need to discipline our kids. Of course we need to teach them. We need to coach them. We need to guide them. This is the first time they've been on the planet. I mean, same for us, but we have that responsibility to teach through love, because as you so beautifully put, a disciple or a learner or a student, if they love and adore and are connected with and feel the respect and the love of that person teaching them, they're going to learn the lesson, or they're going to, take on the values. They're going to learn through that connection. Does that make sense?
Yes, that makes perfect sense to me. We speak the same language, my friend.
So, what else do you feel like there are any other misconceptions or myths around? It might not necessarily be discipline, but maybe, I think for me, punishment has been coming up a little bit, particularly with it's not always dads. I don't want to sort of sweep that brush that it's always the dad. It's definitely not. But I do have a lot of conversations with mums, and I coach a lot of mums. And sometimes it feels like the mum is perceiving that the other parent is more of that punitive, more of that kids need to learn the tough way. We need to prepare them for the real world, because there are consequences in the real world and they're not very nice. Do you know what I mean? What's your sort of perspective maybe on that?
Yeah, so lots of thoughts about that, and I love that you asked this question because it's a powerful one. It's so prevalent in society. So, first of all, for people who are saying, "Do I need to be exactly on the same page with my parenting partner?" Good news, you don't actually have to be completely on the same page. We know enough about attachment to say that if a child has secure attachment with exactly one adult, the child reaps the benefits of secure attachment, period. It doesn't have to be every adult in their life doing the exact same thing in the exact same way. That being said, the second part of what you asked, kids have to learn about the consequences of being in the real world. We have to toughen them up because the world isn't kind. I say, you know what? That's actually a recipe for having children choose dangerous, hurtful, unhelpful, non supportive relationships when they grow up. Now, I realize that's going to sound really harsh, and I want to just let people know I get it, and I'm not here to shame or blame anybody. That being said, I want people to know that kids are going to choose the types of relationships growing up that feel the most familiar to them. We all, as human beings, crave familiarity. So if a parent is punishing a child, shaming a child, making a child feel less than, that person, when they grow up, is going to be more likely to choose a partner who belittles them, makes them feel less than, all of those same things, because they know it. They say, I know how to live in this kind of relationship, even if I'm having a mental health crisis, because it's so prevalent in society. I'm going on and on about that particular part, but obviously I'm very passionate about it. My invitation to everybody out there is to say, what if we raise children in respectful, collaborative, peaceful ways where when that child grows up, they say, I'm going to choose relationships that lift me up. I'm going to choose relationships that empower me. I'm going to choose relationships where I feel valued and important and lovable. Guess what? As an adult right now, the relationships that I have cut are the ones that were that first type. The ones that I seek out are the ones that are the second type. These are my people. This is the kind of life I want. So I say, let's continue this movement so that we can, family by family, change the world for the better, so that children can grow up having healthy relationships, choosing healthy partners, choosing healthy friends, because that's so normal to them that anything else feels uncomfortable and they want no part of it.
Oh my goodness. I am so with you that I understand, and I can just see that in 5, 10, 20 years, the more people who are parenting this way, who are, as you said, teaching their kids through love and trust and building that two-way respect, we're going to have a cohort, or what's the word, a generation of young adults and adults who are looking for that and who are giving that, and that's the norm. Like, that's familiar, and this is just what we do. Like, it's the culture. Does that make sense?
Exactly that. Yeah. And I'll share a very quick personal example. There's someone who I have known for many, many years, and he is more of that old school type, not really always very friendly, not always very welcoming, not always very loving, tends to be a little bit more combative. Because this is a person who I have some pretty good reasons to keep him in my life, I keep him in my life. But if I were to meet him today, he's not somebody who I would choose to continue spending time with. Well, my child really hadn't met him until about a year ago. And when she met him, after meeting him one time, she asked, "Why in the world are we spending time with that person? He feels so uncomfortable to me. Why would you choose a friend like that, Mama?" And it was such a wake up call to me that even at age 9 at the time, she was able to say, "That's not a person I want to see on a regular basis." And it was an invitation to me as her parent to say, "You're right, I need some better boundaries. That's somebody who I want to have less in my life as well, because I've been with this person out of habit, seeing them every couple of years, catching up when there's the opportunity, whatever." But I love that even at age 9, my child was wiser than I and able to say in that moment, "Not healthy, I don't choose that."
Yeah, wow. That is such an eye-opening story. It's so heartwarming when I've had moments where my kids will kind of put right in my face, this is what I'm not okay with. This is not, respectful, or I have a voice, or I say no. And I'm like, whoa, look at that boundary setting. Like, oh, it's taken me 30 something years to learn to do that.
It's beautiful, yeah. And you asked a little while ago about some of the other paradigm shifts with words that we're using, and the new narrative that our kids are coming up with around some of these same words. You said another one a couple of minutes ago, Stephanie. You said the word consequences. Well, guess what? Consequences can be positive. We often think of consequences as punitive or negative or scary. But if I talk to you right now and I like you, I finish up our Zoom call and say, "I really like her." The natural consequence is I want to spend more time talking to you because I like the way you think. So, consequences is another one that we can really reframe for our children, and that it doesn't have to have that negative stigma that the word seems to have had up until now.
Yeah. So with positive discipline, what's the space for consequences? How do you, because I know there are different, I suppose, approaches or styles of parenting, and they sometimes have a different perception or understanding of what consequences are, whether they're okay, whether they're needed, necessary or not. So maybe can you speak to that a little bit?
Happy to. Yeah, I actually have all sorts of examples in the Peaceful Discipline book, but there are, first of all, it's really important to say that peaceful discipline is not boundaryless parenting. We absolutely do get to have healthy boundaries. This is not permissive by any stretch. That said, the two types of consequences that we have when we're talking about how to teach children, let's say, better behavior, we have natural consequences and logical consequences. Both are non punitive. And I want to be clear about that. A natural consequence is exactly what it sounds like. It happens naturally as a result of what has happened. So if we have two kids, siblings perhaps, and child number one steals child number two's toy, and child number two gets mad about it and says, "I don't want you to play with my stuff anymore," the natural consequence is that child number two might say, "I'm going to hide my stuff from you." And the child then who was the instigator in the stealing of the toy, doesn't have access to the stuff. I don't need to go in and take away an iPad or remove a privilege to drive the point home. The children are already working it out because life is a really great teacher. On the flip side, positive consequences, I mentioned a couple of minutes ago. Let's say that a child shares with their sibling. The natural consequence there is sharing feels good. We played well together. I like that. I want to play that way again tomorrow because it feels better to both of us. So there are positive natural consequences as well. Logical consequences are the ones where perhaps the parent does get involved within the construct of the child's well-being, health, safety, things like that. Let's say, I'll take an example that I heard about just this week, that there was a 6-year-old who at the moment is modeling that she can't really be trusted with markers and pens and paint unless it's supervised, because otherwise she takes those lovely artistic instruments to the walls and the couch and the floor, and that's not landing so well for her family. So the logical consequence in this case might be, sweetheart, I see that it's hard for you not to color just on paper, and that the floor is an incredibly big and tempting canvas. I am not comfortable with you coloring on the floor, so let's make sure to put away the markers in a place where they're going to be less tempting for you or less accessible to you. And when you want to color, I'll just make sure that I'm with you so that I can help you keep the coloring instruments where they need to be. That's a logical consequence where I am taking the initiative as the adult to make sure that the behavior stays in line with what it needs to be. But again, taking away an iPad, what in the world does that have to do with anything? It's not related. It is not a logical consequence.
Gosh, I know. Like I suppose saying comes to mind, either natural or logical consequences, and if it's anything else, it's probably punishment, because it's going to be not related to the behavior. It's not going to be related to the lesson that you want them to learn and that you're helping to teach them. And so it's going to be irrelevant. It's going to be useless. It's probably going to maybe in the moment make you feel better, in that when you're frustrated, your child has done, they've put marker or paint all over the couch or the sofa or whatever, that can be triggering. And so a punishment, it's like a knee-jerk reaction that is not thought out. It's reactive. It's sometimes, like, I've been there. I've so been there. And it feels like powerful in the moment because you've told them what not to do and you want them to learn that lesson. But really, as you said, it's not actually teaching them anything about where can I draw, why it isn't okay to draw on the carpet or the walls. So it's not kind of imparting that, I guess, long-term wisdom. Like, it's not helping them make better choices. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. And one of the mistakes I hear a lot of parents make, and again, I want to erase them in compassion because these are the narratives we've been told by our friends, prior generations, whoever it may be. But one of the mistakes I hear parents making is, well, they made a mistake. It is natural that I would give them a consequence. The natural consequence is punishment. No, that's just sticking words together in a way that don't actually apply when we're talking about how this works within the construct of peaceful discipline. So I want to encourage people to really get curious. By all means, notice those triggers that come up in your body. It makes sense that you're mad. It makes sense that you feel whatever you feel. But the goal is to figure out, how can I regulate myself while still being emotionally authentic? I don't need to suck it up. I still get to be mad, but how can I express my anger in a way that does no harm and isn't reactionary to the point where the only thing the child actually learns is, ooh, my adult is scary, because that's not what any of us is really going for.
Yes. And so maybe can we touch on that, the feeling of being triggered, how when we're coming from a peaceful discipline approach, it is human of us to get really frustrated and to get mad if we've asked our child to do something several times and they haven't done it, or, they keep poking or prodding their brother or sister and we've asked them not to and they do, those moments. What advice would you have to parents who think, oh, my kids are, the behavior is triggering me every day. I get so reactive. I raise my voice. I don't like doing this, but how can I, as you said, express that that energy and that emotion in a healthy way, not suppressing it, but then obviously not teaching our kids that when mum or dad get angry, then they're pretty scary and you just want to avoid them at all costs.
Yeah, brilliant question. So, first of all, huge compassion to the parents who are in this place because it's legitimately hard. And I'm not going to shame you. I'm going to tell you, you make perfect sense. Those triggers make sense because you likely learned when you were little that when a child, quote unquote, misbehaves, the adult gets big and scary and yells or punishes or whatever. If you have these scripts soft wired into your brain, notice I said soft wired, not hardwired, it is only natural that you would keep following the script. So there is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing broken about you. Just like you know how to walk because your brain tells you this is how I do this thing. Your brain is telling you how to be reactive because it's what you learned when you were growing up. Now, the good news about that wiring being soft wired in your brain is we do have something called neuroplasticity, which basically is a fancy way to say we can learn new habits. And for many of us, it simply starts with figuring out how can I interrupt the pattern. So I am going to be mindful of noticing my own body. I am noticing that my thermometer is rising. I am noticing frustration or anger or rage coming up in my belly. What can I do right now so that I am less reactive to my child? The goal is not to just suck it up, as I said before. You'll just end up exploding later. The goal is to say, how do I break this pattern? And for right now, it might be as simple. I talk about this in the book. We've got about 6 seconds in our brain in between an input and our reaction, which on one hand is not very long at all. But on the other hand, it's absolutely long enough where I can say, I need a minute. And I walk into the other room and maybe I get a cold glass of water. I say a quick prayer, meditation. I ground myself. I go out in nature, whatever it is that I do, so that I can say, unless it's actually an emergency, it's not an emergency. I want to be peaceful and I'm just going to cool off for a couple of minutes before I proceed with this discussion. And you wait until you can have that discussion in a more peaceful way. And my invitation to you then is don't go for perfection. If this is brand new to you, be so gentle with yourself. And if you are 3% less scary or angry or loud than you were yesterday, celebrate that 3% because the big work happens in baby steps. But over time, you can absolutely become a marathon runner in this work of peaceful discipline because you practiced and celebrated those little wins along the way. And those tiny shifts on a daily basis are absolutely the key to becoming a more peaceful parent.
Yes, I often quote, I don't know where I heard this, but I love it. Small hinges swing big doors. I've got to Google like who said that, but I love it. I think, yes, like these tiny moments, sometimes they're messy moments, but we are incrementally being and doing things a little bit differently to before. Then, in a week or a month or a year's time, our trajectory shifts. And so does like the ripple effects on our kids, that makes big changes as well. Maybe I can squeeze in one more thought / question. When we are not, I love that you said, a few seconds is all we need to be able to circuit break and remove ourselves, go to the other room, grab a drink, whatever we need to do. Can you kind of speak to the idea that that is not losing your authority as a parent? It's not weak. It's not thinking, oh, I have nothing to say, or I'm going to take a break. I see that as really, it takes self-discipline. I think it's really smart parenting. I think it's making a wise choice about nothing good is happening in the heat of the moment. Let's all take a pause and we will revisit this when we're all calm, and then we'll actually have a productive conversation. What are your thoughts on that though? Because I know parents can worry that, no, I have to sort it out now. I've got to nip it in the bud.
Yeah, such a brilliant question. I love that you asked this. So that's absolutely a common narrative. I need to handle this right away. False. That's a huge lie in parenting. There are very, very few things you need to handle right away. If you model being reactive, if you model lacking impulse control, your child will learn those things. I find it much harder work, but also much braver to model to the child emotional regulation and model those healthy coping tools so that it might not happen right away, but keep modeling this. And eventually you will have a child one day who says, I really want to say or do this thing, but I'm going to take a minute because I want to make a better choice. And it's because you modeled it first. And think about what a beautiful seed you plant when you model that emotional regulation for your kids. That is a life skill that they are going to need in order to have healthy, happy relationships with all the people in their lives later on.
I wish everyone could see me. I'm grinning. I love it. I love everything you have shared. Actually, well, this will be up on YouTube as well, so you'll probably see that I'm nodding and smiling, and I have bright cheeks because I just love everything you have shared, Sarah. I lied. I do have one more question. Where did the name Dandelion Seeds come from? Is there some story behind that or some meaning?
Oh, so funny you ask. Yeah, it's a three-part answer. I'll be brief. First thing is when I was naming my business, dandelions were my daughter's favorite quote-unquote flower. So part of it was just out of respect for where she was developmentally at that point and loving to see the wishes. The wishes are part two. We all have wishes for our children and how they develop, how their lives will go. We wish good things for our children. So that's the second part. And then the third part is some people, particularly those who are familiar with the highly sensitive temperament trait, will perhaps be familiar with orchid children versus dandelion children. Dandelion children have a genetic temperament that is incredibly resilient. Dandelions can grow just about anywhere. These children, we want to be able to grow and thrive no matter what the world throws at them. We want to give them the tools and resources that they can handle it. Whereas the orchid children tend to be much more sensitive, need more tender care, which I'm fully in support of. But the goal is to give seeds of resilience to all children so they can thrive no matter their circumstances.
Oh, wow, that's brilliant. What a beautiful collection of I think meaning and values and in that name. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So I want to say a massive thank you for coming on. I think we could talk for a lot longer and I could pick your brain. I would love to dive into the dandelion and the orchid and just the concept of strong-willed, sensitive. Like I just find that fascinating. And I know a lot of parents find it challenging when they have more than one child and they have different temperaments. And I need to parent this child differently. How do I parent that one? And so there's I encourage everyone as we hop off to please go and follow Sarah's work. Find the links below in the show notes because I just love everything you share and you're doing such incredible work for the parents across the world who, we know we need all the support we can get because parenting is I think one of the longest and most challenging journeys or jobs that we will ever have. And so I'm grateful for people like you.
Thank you so much, and it's completely mutual.
Hey everyone, it's Steph here again. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Okay, so the rain has stopped. My kids and I think our neighbors' kids are now inside in the lounge room, and I've just heard someone say, I'm going to get your teeth. Teeth. I don't know if that is code for something, but I'm going to go in and check it out. I hope you guys found this really interesting, really insightful. I hope also you love Sarah Moore's work as much as me. And I do want to remind you, if you can take 30 seconds to quickly do a rating or review of this podcast, that would really help it to reach more parents and more people who may want to hear about this way of parenting, emotionally intelligent parenting, and respectful and collaborative. Please, I would love if you can just share the word. You could actually also put it on your socials. If you're on Facebook or Instagram, you can kind of copy the link or even just write the name and say, hey guys, I've listened to this podcast and it's pretty good. I'm sharing it because I got something out of it. That would be amazing. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. Have a great rest of your week, guys, and I'll see you next time.